Pack Lapadat. Look at this. We got the dream team back here, fellas. Eric Helms, Matt
Sir.
Gary, two legends of the game, and we were just mentioning we've had quite the year to look back at and quite the year to look ahead to. Two
Mm.
different podcasts. First, we're going to do the year looking back, the year that was 2024. And we'll do our awards, our picks for the awards, and I'm sure good discussion will come out of this, like it always does when we do these. So, let's do, and obviously, before we move forward, I got Rory, the linchpin, as well as Amelia Potter. I'll be inserting their picks due to me being on vacation in Morocco, much needed. Let me tell you, I've been a busy boy this year. I recorded these in two different segments, so I'll be sprinkling in their picks and conversation as we go as well. But all right, fellas, let's not bury the lead here. Let's get right to it. Best lifters, men and women's. Let's start with the gentleman. Eric, do you want to take this one, sir?
Do I want to take this one? It's a tough one. Best lifter, you have like who is putting up the biggest pound for pound total, or you also have who is kind of the standout star as far as victories. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here, but we're just doing best lifter for the men, right? Is that right?
Right now,
That's what I
yeah.
have to. That's what I have to limit myself to. Well, I think I've got to go with the long time coming. Now, not only the Sheffield 2024 champion, but also the world champion in the highly contested 93 kilo class, Gustav Hedlund. I think that's it's just such a contentious class, and it was such a tight battle. Um, and the people he was going against, who we're going to talk about later, that fight with Jonathan Keiko, I think was pretty impressive. And just to see everything come together and then it not just to be a one-time thing, but solidifying both, I personally see Gustav Hedlund as the lifter of the year on the men's side. I was very impressed, and I think it's one of those things where someone puts in a lot of time and effort to consistently build slowly. It is, I think, a blue collar story, if you will, in the 93 kilo class to see Gustav, take that top title in both the major competitions that have emerged in IPF powerlifting. So that's who get my pick. I thought it was really cool to watch. So yeah,
Are you on page or do you have someone else?
Identical.
Because I can tell you right now, Rory has a different pick.
I'm guessing Rory went with Austin Perkins.
Male lifter of the year 2024. I'm saying Austin Perkins. Uh, what was that face? That feels like a really, really safe pick. Um,
It
so,
is.
so first of all, won the 74 kilo class at Worlds by quite a margin. I don't want to call him a breakout because we have seen Austin before, but this is the first time that we've sort of seen him back at the high level in the IPF after like a few years in USAPL, right? So really pleased to see him back. I think that he is sort of setting the standard a little bit for men's totals. Like if we imagine a curve of the world records across weight classes, I think Austin at the moment is sort of the peak of that curve, and I expect we're going to see other world records sort of rising to that level over the coming years, but that is not going to happen very quickly, right? So his 836 total, like, would it have won the 83 kilo open class? Like, no, absolutely not. But he would have come third in the 83 kilo class with that same total. And it's what, 12 kilos, 13 kilos behind the world record total. 861 is the world record total. So sorry, 24 kilos behind the world record total there in the weight class up. So I think that not only did he win the world championships, which is a pretty good starting point, but I think he is setting the standard for men's world record totals at the moment.
He also won best lifter at the World Championships.
He did also win best lifter, yes.
I mean, the best of the best. at the biggest event is pretty flippin'. That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, Amelia, have you landed on a lily pad on this one?
Yeah, I feel like Rory, there are a couple of safe options that we've kind of mentioned. Obviously, Austin, I think, is one of those. Gustav is the other, in terms of best lifter, and that is if you're talking about purely performance. I think in terms of the people's athlete, there are other people that you might chuck their names in the hat. It really, I suppose, depends your definition of what that best lifter might look like. But I think in terms of, performances we've seen this year, both Austin and then Gustav obviously winning Sheffield and then going on to, like you were saying before, the one of the most competitive flights and classes at Worlds this year, winning that. Um, and he talked a big game heading into Sheffield this year, and he showed up for it. So I think it's definitely worth putting his name in the hat for that as well in the male side.
So that's your pick?
Yeah,
It's funny. You worded it in a way to say, well, Gustav's in the argument. Like for
yeah.
sure, for
I,
sure. But what's
I
your pick, love?
it's we'll see when it comes to your picks how you dance around it too. But
Yeah, I know all the games you play because I play them too, right?
yeah, that's it. I'll say it's hard. It's a hard pick between those two. I'd say my brain is going with Gustav, my heart is going with Austin, but my mouth will go with Gustav as well in terms of my decision making. So I'll stick
Nice.
with Gustav.
I love how you didn't let yourself off the hook. I love it. I appreciate it.
I'm a politician.
It's a tough one.
Well, we all know Rory. We all love Rory. Rory's a literal boy. He's the type of guy you say best lifter, and he has a very specific definition of that. And it is true that if we're just talking about
Think
who
outside the
was
box.
like things can mean a little more. Like when you start talking about Muhammad Ali and legacy, Rory's going to be like, how do I quantify that?
That's
He's
right.
gonna struggle. So I don't fault, and I'm not at all surprised, nor do I think he's necessarily wrong to say that Austin Perkins is the best lifter, because he's literally the best lifter of
He's just not
2024.
necessarily right.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's wrong, and I'm right in all cases.
I
But
mean,
I
he's
understand.
boldface wrong.
Yeah,
But
but besides that, he's got a valid case.
I'll also throw this out there. In terms of, well, first off, my best lifter, I'm taking Gustav Hedlund as well. For the reasons already said. I think if you were to twist my arm, I could see where you could say Perk. Um, however, Gustav Hedlund won Sheffield. I mean, that's a battle in terms of best lifter, great. But in a lot of ways, Sheffield is like another rendition of best lifter, all the world champions. Is it not? Head to head, same day. I kind of like that. I like head to head. I like same day. So while Perk did it over a series of days at the World Championship, Gustav did it head to head same day in Sheffield, which is essentially our best lifter as well for Worlds. Then on top of that, winning the World Championship in the 93s, which is a super stacked division, as well as the significance of that win, he's going to take my vote. But I do think if someone was to raise their hand and say Perk, I'm not going to fight to the bitter end on this. You can make a case for Perk. He did quite a bit. I mean, his show at PA Nats as well as at Worlds was phenomenal, and he did establish himself as the pound for pound king. Another person I'll throw out there. I know you fellas aren't as up on the untested, but you do know John Hack, and I'll just say for anyone who might say, why not John Hack? Why don't you give love to John Hack? I'm going to give John Hack some flowers. And then why I don't think he would take this. John Hack competed twice in 2024, hit a PR total in the 100 kilo class. He only weighed 93.4. He hit a 1043.5 kilo world record at Ghost Clash 3 in April. God bless. Phenomenal showing. And John Hack's a legend. We all know this. Then he did a 1013 kilo total in the 90 kilo class at Power Surge in September. That is below his previous personal best in that weight class. So broke one world record. However, And everybody knows, and I'm staying consistent here. I prefer head to heads. I prefer, if we're looking at Ghost Clash 3, you cannot compare Ghost Clash 3 to either Sheffield or Worlds. You just can't. He broke a world record, which I love. His second outing, his total went down as opposed to up. It wasn't a world record. He's previously done more. I think John had a phenomenal year, obviously. He's pound for pound the best on the untested side. There's no question about that. And the guy's a legend. But to unseat either Perk or Gustav, I can't see it with those two. I'll throw him in the conversation, and I just did. And that's my respect to him. And I just don't see the argument to best either of those other two gentlemen we just said. You guys in agreement with that?
Well, I'll tell you the reason why I didn't have John Hack picked. Because next year, when I sit down with him for breakfast at the European Powerlifting Conference, I want him to once again angrily, well, actually, very mildly but slightly annoyingly express his disagreement and frustration with why I didn't pick him for something. Because I got to meet John Hack for the first time at the EPC out in Ireland, which was awesome, by the way, one of the highlights for me. Had breakfast with John Hack, and maybe about 10, 15 minutes into it after us, like kind of breaking the ice, he was like, why wasn't I even in the conversation for GOAT with Ed Cohn? Like I'm totally, I love it. So it
What
adds
did you
to my
say?
rich, well, I don't know if you've seen John Hack. I said very
Watched.
nice things, and I
Yeah,
was like,
good.
oh, I'm pretty sure that was Matt Gary. I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
you're like it was
Yeah.
either Matt Gary or Six was editing some shit. I don't remember. I don't know how this happened.
Yeah, there's something stepped on my audio and my mic.
That's
It was rough, So I know I just threw you both under the bus
nice.
and
Perfect.
claimed ignorance. No, but we had a good talk about it. He totally understands. In all seriousness, it was a tongue in cheek conversation, and it was really good. And I have a ton of respect for John Hack, and also big shout out to him. He just competed in a strongman event
Yeah, I seen
this
that.
year, which is
I
pretty
don't I
cool.
don't I don't want him crossing over and leaving powerlifting just yet, but that is pretty cool.
Well, I think what's going to keep him in powerlifting, his primary goal is to get me to choose him for something. That's what I
Right.
took from that.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, yeah, I mean, some say I'm a narcissist, others say I'm a narcissist. I think probably somewhere in between the two personally. But
Yeah.
no, but in all seriousness, yeah, no, John Hack is like he definitely deserves his flowers in some ways. This is actually something he did express to me. So this you'll find interesting, and I don't think I'm saying anything that John wouldn't say publicly, is that in some ways he wished he had stuck or left the untested or left the tested scene a little bit um, later because he wasn't able, none of us could predict how competitive it would become. I think he saw it for his own personal journey as a way to eclipse even higher because he left the IPF a world champion. But I think if he could be like, man, I would love to be in this 83 battle that's going on now.
Or
He's a
93s.
competitor. Yeah, absolutely. He is such a competitor. I have a ton of respect for John Hack. I mean, how can you not? And very humble guy too, despite the fact that he is arguably, I'll go for so far as to say arguably he could be considered, the GOAT. So anyway, I'll leave it there. But no, I don't disagree with you, Ryan. I tend to see it the same way.
And one more thing I'll say about Eric, you had said Hack would say more than likely he would have at the very least prolonged his stay in the tested. He said that on King of List before, like straight up.
Okay, good,
Hey, look,
good.
yeah, like at the time, context is everything, and I won't belabor it. We'll move on to in a second here, but at the time, they had I forget the name of the event, but it was a big money event. Gracie V was holding it. Um,
The Kern Open.
2017. Sorry,
I believe it was the Kern Open.
that was it.
Yep.
And it's essentially a philanthropist who's just giving away money. He was making no money off of this through a massive untested event. And Hack had just won Worlds 2017. Hey, let me throw my hat in there. And then at the time, tested and untested was more at parity. Now it's completely slid,
Yeah.
and tested is so much bigger with options. Worlds is so much bigger, Sheffield, etc. Even like the local meets SPD is running now, as opposed to untested. um, it is what it is. You can't go back. But Hack is still a legend doing his damn thing, and I just want to make sure he's still getting recognition for it. Not listen to a podcast, being like, God damn, okay, well, do I get a mention? Do I get look? Am I in the conversation at all? You are, sir. You're in the conversation. Moving on to the women's, and let's give it to Matt Gary first this time. Matt, who is your female 2024 best lifter?
It is undoubtedly Agatha Sitko for all the same reasons that I think Eric mentioned and bestowed upon Gustav for winning Sheffield, and then of course going to Worlds, following it up with a World Championship. Agatha competed 9 times in 2024 in a variety of weight classes, and she won every single time that she competed. The only blip on the radar, if you will, was a bench meet that she did where she threw on a bench shirt, and I don't think she had a lot of practice, and she wound up bombing out of that at the Arnold Sports Festival. But otherwise, her year has just been beyond stellar. And so for, again, the same reasons that Eric said Gustav should be our male lifter of 2024, I have Agatha Sitko as our female lifter of 2024.
Eric, what are you thinking?
Okay, I have a question that may or may not influence my decision. And this may or may not just be a way to spice up something that is a very clear choice. Okay. Do either one of you gentlemen know if a 84 plus female has ever won best lifter at Worlds before?
I don't believe it's happened. No, because yeah, I don't think so. If it has happened, if it has happened, it would have been Bonica.
Yep.
But I don't believe it was. I'd have to double check. That's a really good
Yeah.
I
question.
love how you said either you gentlemen as though you weren't asking Matt directly. Thank you for the respect, but that was
Oh, you could definitely know that, Ryan. You know, in fact, you know, like there is
very
probably
nice
a
of
tier
you.
list. If I had to ask just one of you, we know who I would have
There it
asked, but
is.
I just
There it is. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Bonica may have won when it was Wilkes on the Wilkes score.
That's right.
That's worth looking into, but don't quote me on that. So
All right. So
yeah.
it is possible that for the first time ever, Sonita Molla did win Best Lifter at Worlds in the 84 plus kilo category and totaled something insane and beat Agata Sitko. So that I think is worth mentioning. And she has had an amazing year. But with that, because I am a researcher and a scientist and I need to be consistent, and I said previously that I chose Gustav Hedlund, and the only argument was that literally, you know, per kind of Rory's take, Austin Perkins actually totaled a little bit more. You could almost make the argument that Sunita could be, since she did actually win best lifter over Agata at Worlds. But Agata won Sheffield and won Worlds and has just been absolutely crushing it in every possible way. So I will put out that I think an argument could be made for Sunita, just like it could have been made for Austin.
100%. Well, first off, there's some differences here in that Sunita covered new ground at the World Championships, where Perk, he's already hit 851. Obviously, it wasn't at the World Championship level. However, Sunita, we'd seen him do 851, and he won Worlds. His total came down a little. Totally fine, as it should. It is what it is. I'm just saying, in terms of a nudge different, Sunita took us into the 730s, which is insane. You know, Matt had previously mentioned Bonica. Bonica, who had the most extensive resume in the 84 pluses, never even teetered into the 700s before. And she had the most extensive resume now this quickly. We're talking 730s.
Well, she did total over 700 at Sheffield. At Sheffield, she totaled over 700.
Bonica?
No, sorry. Sonita. Did you say?
Yeah. So for Sunita to be totaling into the 700s is insane. For her to take you could say Sunita, not just so this is where I know what you mean in terms of the best lifter from Worlds, kind of the same as Perk, but you had to take Gustav. However, the difference were if you wanted to abandon that, I'm building the case where Sunita first for 730s, Sunita first for 300 kilo squat, Sunita covering new ground we had never seen in 2024. Whereas Perk, while phenomenal, had the accolade of best lifter, hadn't covered that new ground we hadn't seen quite like this. I mean, straight up barriers like that. So if you wanted to abandon that and say, you know what, frick, how do you go against literally the strongest period history in historical? You could argue her 300 kilo squat is like Ray doing 1,000 pounds. I don't know what the equivalent it is, but maybe it is for a woman, maybe.
Yeah.
And then for her to go 311, yeah, I mean, she's doing things. It's nuts. She's got the biggest squat tested or untested. Period. I mean, you could. Sunita's in this conversation in a very real way. I'm totally
100%.
fine with taking Agatha. As a matter of fact, I'll use this as an opportunity as a segue to take Agatha Shitko because she competed 9 times, won Sheffield, won Worlds, and in that girl power at 71 and change made us all think, holy smoke, 627, you are actually a threat to Amanda Lawrence. Yes, you are. Never thought. I thought it was just me being hyperbolic before. Well, maybe she goes after Amanda Lawrence after she wins her second world title. Maybe she's the first to go for 3. Wow. I won't give her credit for having done that in 2024. This is in the future, but all of a sudden that conversation is a lot more real, isn't it? 627 at 71 kilo body weight. She doesn't need to fill 84. She can go 80 kilos. What's she going to do? And she's 21. She's a baby. She's a child, Eric. Okay. And and by the time she's 23 in 2026, the progress she might have, where's she going to be? If she can stay healthy, my God. I don't know. A legend in the making.
And I want
Go
to,
ahead, man.
yeah, I just want to throw in one fun fact also about Agatha. So there are 8 weight classes, as we know, which gives the opportunity for 32 different world records because there are 4 disciplines: squat, bench, deadlift, and total. Agatha has 19% of the world records because she has 6 of the 32 possible world records.
Yeah.
She's got 3 of the bench world records in 3 different weight classes. She has a deadlift world record at 69 kilos. And then, of course, she has the all-important total in both the 69 and the 76 weight classes. There's no other lifter that's even remotely close to that. And so I mean, she's, we throw around this term outlier. She's an outlier in every sense of the word. You stand them up and she's knocking them down. So she's undoubtedly the lifter of the year. And like you said, Sunita is undoubtedly in the conversation as well for her accomplishments. Unquestionably.
All right, Rory. How about the women's side? Who is the women's 2024 best lifter?
So I was tossing up between a couple of different people for this one. So sorry if I am going to steal your thunder, Amelia. But the person that I am going to settle on here is Agatha Shitko. So I think she's just had an absolutely phenomenal year. Starting with winning Sheffield in, sorry, was that January? No, beginning of February. Winning her class at the World Championships. She did girl power. She did, she just competed so many times this year. And it seems like she just never eased off through the entire year either. Even though she could have gone into some of these meets and just cruised, it just doesn't look like she has. If anything, it looks like she's sort of picking up speed. So my pick for female lifter of the year is Agatha Shitko.
Amelia? I mean, this is going to be a tough one to try to play devil's advocate, right?
Well, if I'm going to go into my political era, I'll say it's definitely worth mentioning Sunita for many reasons. To keep it short and sweet, I definitely wanted to mention Sunita because I think any other year it would have been her. But Agatha is my pick for, all the reasons and more that Rory said. She won Sheffield. She went down the weight class for that. She went back up for Worlds. She won Worlds. She just this year alone broke the bench world record in the 69, 76s, and 84s. Yeah. She's a phenom and she's a junior. And Rory was saying, it doesn't seem like she's slowing down. Um, and she's looking strong heading into Sheffield, which is now just a few weeks away. So I think my pick has to be also Agatha for female lifter of the year.
All right, fellas, let's talk about comeback of the year 2024. For me, we have a clear winner, but this is just for me. I do have a possible runner up. Had things gone slightly differently, it would have been far more solidified in my mind's eye, but I'm interested. Who went first last time?
Eric did.
Eric went first last time?
He did.
Yes.
Okay, Matt, it's your turn then.
My 2024 comeback lifter of the year award goes to Taylor Atwood for his amazing performance. Yep, and I know that it wasn't international, but he had stepped away due to injury and kind of had to re-tinker, go back into the lab with Jason Tremblay and Ben Escrow, and now of course Patrick Carr and the team. And I think he announced himself at this Scary Strong meet in Maine most recently. This was a couple months ago in October, and basically cruised to an 8:30 total, which made us all kind of yearn for more and wonder how much room is left in the tank. And so, yeah, that's why I picked Taylor.
First off, excellent pick. And it's crazy how many people, time flies. 2021 wasn't that long ago. We're in 2024, but the turnover in powerlifting, 3 years is a full career, and
It's
a lot of people come and go. And for a lot of people that came since 2021, they heard of Atwood. They've heard him on podcasts. They've seen him on Sheffield. Do people refer to him, not just heard him on podcasts, but people that they look up to come on podcasts and refer to him as the GOAT and refer to him in all of his accolades. And we're talking the biggest of the big names all tip their hat to Taylor Atwood, referring to him like this. And they see him on different broadcasts, etc. And I got the Shitco even said, I kind of sort of miss the Taylor Atwood era. And I'm excited because he's competing this weekend. This is when we were recording a podcast same day. She's like, we gotta tidy this up, wrap this up, because I can't miss Taylor Atwood's comeback. So in terms of a comeback, yeah, 8:30 isn't going to win him worlds, but he had so much room in the tank on those. It was crazy. And that's what rattled people. And he didn't fill it out. He can be over 83 and cut. He's got improvements to make and adjustments to make. He was still finding his new squat hand grip. He's a larger human, and he had to move his hands out, and he had his thumbs running. He had to go thumbless because the pressure of the bar. He's like, man, I'm just finding my 83 kilo body, like a young boy in high school, just getting used to his new body. Eric, isn't that a great story? So Taylor, Eric's like, why do you keep throwing me these weird? Am I supposed to this?
I need to talk about going through puberty now, I guess. That's what we're doing now.
You're a
Yeah.
scientist, Eric. Back me up here and jump in whenever you can. But Taylor Atwood come back 100%. No, it's the significance of who he is and where he came from and how far gone he was, to the point where people are like he's never coming back. And now the hope it brings. I think for sure the significance of the greatest powerlifter of our generation coming back like that and giving a statement like that. Yeah. Yeah, you could make that claim for comeback of the year, Taylor Atwood. Even if it's no major title on the line or world record, unofficial or official. I think it's appropriate. Eric, what do you think?
Oh, I think that's an excellent pick. I have a different pick, but it is more of a vicious rivalry and then someone finally coming out on top rather than kind of that hopeful arc. So I think they both kind of provide two sides of the same coin. There's been a battle going on for multiple years in powerlifting, not between two people, but between one person and a group, a shadowy group um, that colludes together to tear down one stalwart person. He came, he burned his ships, and then they burned him multiple times. And that is the battle between Gavin Naden and the IPF jury. how many times has he lost that battle? And this year, he managed to post up a world record squat as well as a world record 901 total and went back and forth battling that jury and was able to come out on top. So, yeah, I'd say the biggest comeback of the year is Gavin Aiden versus the IPF jury table and actually being able to come away with probably what we all knew he was and saying he's been capable of for a long time. And I was pleased to see that he burned his ships and he actually was able to land on the shore and stand there as the champ, doing something momentous, setting the new squat and total world record at NAPFs. I thought that was really cool to see.
He planted his flag on that beach, didn't he, sir?
He did.
And also in our hearts.
Yes. And every previous time he planted the flag and the jury said, I'm sorry, but this flag isn't to regulation. They just took it away, you know?
Sorry.
So, yeah.
I love, dude. Nobody sets it up like you do. Holy smokes! Did you set that pick up, or we were literally on the edge of our seats, like, who the fuck is this? Yeah, it's like, ah. And then you brought it in. Nicely done. Nicely done. You guys got some great freaking picks. You know, at one point, Gavin came on the podcast and he did a recap. He'd come on for a couple different reasons. And then he's like, you know what? I would like to come on here as an athlete again at some point. How do I do that? How do I earn that to just come on here as an athlete and not a host for some talking about somebody else? And that's how you do that. That's how you.
Mhm.
He was all right afterwards. But Gavin's always good on these podcasts. Door is always open for him. I'm going to go with Kasim Sand, and I'll
Oh man,
That's a good one.
brief
very good pick.
explanation on him. Kasim Sand at the Asian Championships 2022 broke the world record and looked like he was poised to, at the very least, battle for the world title, if not take it. He would be the front runner. After all, he hit the world record at IPF World Standards, which obviously means a lot. It was going to mean huge for his nation of Thailand and the Asian champions, period, for him to come out like that. Series of events. He's been on the podcast talking about it. And I mean, it went from bad to worse in 2023. And, you know, there were worlds where he's not even on podium, let alone pulling for the win and showing what he's full well capable of. We're 2 years later. His world record still stood, but he wasn't close to it. And at certain points, not even in the conversation. And if people are saying, well, you'd have to be a hater to not have had him in the conversation, Kasim Stan himself said, I was doubting whether or not I was on the level at a certain point. Will I ever fully come back? And for him to not only come back, but in the greatest battle I've ever seen at a world championships, where all three gentlemen on the podium had the exact same total, and to him to win on body weight, and the gentleman in there, it was a star-studded event. From people breaking the world record unofficially, like Garcia, to two-time world champion in Penna, to the world record holder in Kasim Sand, right down to Kyoto, Joe Jordan. Yeah, I mean, it was a stacked event and an absolutely sensational battle. And for him to finally have climbed that mountaintop and comeback is in, he had to have been there and gone, wasn't a world champion, but the world record. And to been there with expectations and to have him as far off that nobody was talking about him. At least not with the same vigor that they were when he had the world record. Now you have to. Now you better. Now you better. So I got Kasim Sand. I would also say Russell Orhe, whom in 2023 did not compete at all. And previous to that, in 2022, going into 2023, his best 82 and a half, 83 kilo total was 838. Took a complete year off, only to return in 2024, 860 at US Nationals. And US Nationals didn't have chumps, you know, from Angelo to Chris Perez. There was not an easy, also ran event. They had some killers in the 83s, 860 at that event, not competing at all. And then at Worlds, of course, he took silver, which is phenomenal, with 843.5. Had he won Worlds, and I think he would have had to win Worlds to beat Kasim Sandout, or any of the people you guys have said, but had he won Worlds, it might have been his because he was to be gone, literally gone from the sport, come back and he put up anything around 860. He was the first 83 to hit 860. And had he put up 860 again, the difference between 838 to 860, it's a nice chunk. That's a nice comeback. That's a great marked improvement over the last time we saw him as an 83. But not to be, and it is what it is.
I have an
Now,
honorable mention in this category.
go ahead, sir.
So I don't know if people have been following numerous times related to Sheffield and even the battle of the 66s. We brought up the potential of a Kyoto Uchiyama doing what we see in training or being able to put it together, but having technical issues and I was like, hey, but now he's working with Kedrick and he's no longer a firefighter. This is going to come together, and that promise never quite panned out until just recently at Asian Championships. Kyoto Uchiyama totaled 725. And that is a kind of a similar situation to Gavin Naden, in my opinion, where it's someone who just couldn't quite put it all together and finally did in an international comp, which was cool to see. And yeah, so I know how much how much pressure that lifter puts on himself. And yeah, I think that was that's worth mentioning. Just being able to put together a world record total in a very contested weight class when you had previously been finishing off podium just earlier that year.
I mean, if you pick him, I could totally see that as well. Especially with he had been written off. He had been given chances before, and then Sheffield. Head to head with Penna. A lot of people picked him to be Penna, despite the fact that Penna was a reigning world champ. Fell short. At this World Championships, on the broadcast, I said, you know, men lie, women lie, but patterns don't. And I see a pattern in Kyoto. He can't hang on to those deadlifts. He's not locking them out. It's just you see it coming. And after his opener, same thing happened. And for him to have rallied for these Asian championships, taking the world record by hanging on and locking these out in 725, here we are for sure. It's a good comeback story. It's a tough one though, only because Kassem Sand obviously head to head went with him. If you take a 26, or sorry, if you take a 66, probably more likely to go to Kassem Sand, but definitely worth a conversation and an honorable mention. That I mean, he finished the year with a bigger total for what that's worth. We prefer, I think all of us prefer head to heads, especially world title involved. But it is, I'm sure Kyoto ain't mad about how his
Okay.
year went.
That is actually my comeback of the year as well. I think Kasim Sand is a great pick for comeback of the year because, of course, he did break the world record total 2 or 3 years ago at the Asian Championships, and he's just really been struggling to replicate that result for quite some time. So being able to come back 2 years later and hit it still wasn't even quite the same total, but to be able to hit almost the same total at the World Championships, head to head when it mattered, and then to win on body weight when everyone on the podium was at the same total is just phenomenal. It was incredible to watch. Yeah, that I think is a great call for comeback of the year.
I'll say Kassem Sands, I think the 66s, I remember, Ryan, you and I were commentating 66s at Worlds this year, and we were like, how on earth is anything going to top this? What a session. Like, it was absolutely phenomenal. And we thought, like, this is the peak of Worlds. It's only down here from there. And then every other session was phenomenal. And we're like, well, that was good because we were worried that was going to be the peak. But it was absolutely phenomenal. And I think going in, he'd been around for a while, but going in, it was kind of who's going to win? It's going to be Panna. So you're like, it is all these big storylines. Um, and I think he got a little bit forgotten. So I think for a lot of people, it wasn't until deadlifts that they really saw him coming in. By that time, it was too late. So I think, he's definitely worth mentioning. No one dramatically to me stands out in terms of comeback on the women's side. I think for a lot of the women, women's powerlifting has been building loads the last few years. So a lot of the names we're seeing at the top are ones that we've been seeing fighting a lot. But that's my final pick for
That's
that.
for sure. All right, let's move on to the upset of the year. Eric,
Oh,
who
I
is,
feel like there's only one choice here. Am I wrong, Ryan?
think if you think, try to think of like, is there anyone possible?
Well,
It's gonna be
I'll come out with it, and I think the hype surrounding it only amplified it because there was talks of Team USA sweeping. Um, there was so much hype after US Nationals, the comeback of Russell Orhee, also who Russell Orhee is and how he's perceived as kind of this just iconic, undefeatable lifter who even had a little bit of a bad guy arc. And then to see Jurens, who has been in the game a long time and, the context around the story and what it meant to him and how it unfolded and the excellent storytelling around that moment. Man, the battle between Jurens and Russ and Jurens coming out on top, and also then just to make it that much more poignant and cool, which I liked was how graceful in defeat that Russ was. To me, yeah, that was the biggest upset. Nobody saw that coming. The Brits will say that they did, but I will say that it was absolutely an upset if we look at who was favored and what totals have been put up. And I think even if you talk to the gentleman directly involved in that battle. So no, huge hats off to Jurens. I thought that was an incredible moment and a very cool battle and a big upset as far as the expectations of most people had going into it.
well, we have a Brit here with us, so I'll
We
throw it to
do.
Matt in one sec. But also, okay, would it surprise you? I can't remember who, either Amelia or Rory, would have picked Kassem Sand.
Hmm.
Could you steel man a case for that, Eric? Or you think
Absolutely
yeah,
not.
like
No.
I don't think it's Kassem Sand either. I don't think that's upset of the year. I think he's definitely in the hunt. Comeback because he'd faced, but we all knew he's on the level.
Yes.
Let me throw some stats here to further back up your point. So going in there, a poll by the community by SBD, 91% of those polled said they pick Russ to win. Going in, Russ's best lift was 860, his best total. Going in, Juren's best total was 823 and a half. You
Yep.
can see how if you look at this, if both of them have their best days, 860 to 823 and a half, that's more than, wow, what if Russ doesn't get his last squat because it's high? Is his last squat going to be a 36 and a half kilo jump with Matt Gary as head coach? I don't think so. Matt, would you have let him take a 36 and a half kilo jump from second to third? Probably not. So when you're thinking of avenues, the British are like, well, how did you not see this coming? To your point, Jurens was on the podcast and said straight up, I thought I was fighting for second. And as a matter of fact, I thought I was probably fighting for second right up until deadlifts. And then
Mhm.
when I started seeing deadlifts and the weights being thrown on, I was like, oh my God, what are we actually fighting for? And he looked and it started to come to him. So in terms of those things, how did you not see this coming? Come on. What are we talking about here? It was definitely an upset win. And I mean, it was massive for powerlifting. Even Russ, to your point about Russ taking this like a man, Russ came on the podcast the very next day. That live podcast KOTL did with White Lights Media came live, unedited, took it on the chin and showed up. Some people were wondering if he would. Yes, well, he didn't run, he didn't hide. Took it on the chin and actually said, "This is probably better for powerlifting, anyways. It's probably good for the shakeup. It's probably not a bad thing." And he'll swallow his pride and for the better of the sport. Matt, what's your take on this?
I don't know that I have anything to add. I mean, that was just a monumental upset in every sense of the word. And so hats off to Jurens. And as you said, classy for Russ to accept it, graciously, be gracious and classy in defeat. And yeah, I mean, it's unquestionably the upset of the year.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the easiest decisions, I think, almost unanimously, unless Amelia or Rory argued Kasimsan. I think it's undoubtedly the upset of the year.
No, I was just reading off my notes. Yeah, my upset of the year, I think we were chatting before we recorded because I think some people will also put Cassim Sand maybe in both of those categories. For me, I think the one that was the biggest standout was the whole 83 Duran's Russ fight. Because I except like a handful of people from GB who I think had unwavering faith in Duran's, I think everyone was like, this is Russ's, he's back, he's just going to walk all over the 83s, and there'll be a huge gap, and then there'll be people fighting for second and third. Um, and I definitely was, and this, Ryan, I was one of the people that believed Duran's could give Russ a run for his money. And it's a battle I'm looking forward to seeing again with the addition of a couple other great athletes at Sheffield. But I think for a lot of people, that was the most shocking thing. So I'll put Duran's v Russ at World, and Duran's coming out on top as the upset of the year for me.
Rory?
We have to start comparing notes beforehand so we don't say all the same things. But I agree. The Battle of the 83s was really good. The other one that I will throw, the other name that I will throw in there is that I think if we go back and look at the polls that Six-Pack did leading into this, I think a lot of people also had Inahoro ahead of Duran's. He's got obviously weapon of a deadlift, and so I think a lot of people were expecting him to just be able to pull whatever he needed to pull to get onto the top of the podium. And obviously that changed a little bit this year, given that World Games was on the line for coming third, and coming third actually mattered a lot more than it has in previous years. But so I think a lot of people were probably expecting that to go Russell, Inahoro, then Duran's potentially, and with Russell having a 30-kilo lead over second place, and then for Duran's to come out and win it like that, and with that deadlift that was firstly that was the coldest deadlift that I have seen in an IPF meet in a very long time. Silencing the entire audience. You can probably remember you could have heard a pin drop in that room, and then smoking it. He probably had 10 or 15 kilos more on that deadlift if he needed it, and he just didn't. So he just didn't bother. That was excellent, and I'm looking forward to seeing that rematch as well.
All right. Let's talk about, how about this one? Coach of the year.
Coach of the year.
Eric, you went first last time, right?
Well, we can't make Matt go first as a coach because
Okay, Eric.
You're a coach as well, Eric.
this is true. And in fact, we do have the 2023 national head coach of the Canadian team for the Sheffield on. So, I didn't get
There's
to
some
do
trivia
that this year. I think it's Matt Gary, damn it. I think the expectation of the U.S. sweeping set a bar that was probably unrealistic, but I think the way that the U.S. team performed at Worlds was excellent, and the calls that were made were excellent. And I am heavily biased because I consider Matt to be a mentor and a friend, but I will also stand by it. And I know Matt won't select himself, so that's why I'm going to go first, so I can make my claim that it is Coach Matt Gary.
Nicely said. Yep. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I've got quite a bit to say. First of all, Eric, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. In all the ways that I've mentored you, you've probably unknowingly mentored me, both of you, in many ways, and so I appreciate, love, and respect you both. And I just really thanks for the heartfelt words. I think sometimes our knee-jerk reaction when we're selecting a coach of the year is to pick a programming coach, and so I'm actually flattered and honored and happy that Eric picked, a game day coach or a national team coach, because I think they're oftentimes overlooked. I think it's just our knee-jerk reaction to pick the person that, creates or writes the recipe. But oftentimes it's the game day coach or the national team coach who cooks the dish. and delivers the award-winning cuisine, if you will. So now, having said all of that, there's a lot of programming coaches, or I should say some programming coaches, who do both and do it quite well. And so, many are known for their programming acumen, or simply they're just known for their rosters. But if we were talking about game day coaches, so if I went off in the area that Eric ventured into in choosing me, I think almost any year I could select Kara Arvidsson of Sweden, the head coach of the Swedish national team. I mean, she's brilliant. She's on my Mount Rushmore of game day coaches. I mean, she's just incredible. I look up to her. I appreciate her expertise. I consider her a friend. I consider her a colleague. And so I like locking horns and doing battle with her. I would also mention this year Peter Lucy, who is the head coach of the Thailand team, who guided Kasimsan to victory. And then also more recently, Ross Lepla, the M1 world champion at 83 kilos in South Africa. Both of those were Mozart-like performances, if you will, in terms of strategy and attempt selection. And so if we're going in that direction, which I actually am not, those could be my picks. But I'm going to pick for my coach of the year in 2024 as Marcellus Williams. And so, and I'm going to tell you why. A lot of people don't realize this, but I think arguably the single most important role that man will ever possess is he's a father. And in an age where there have been a lot of comments about toxic masculinity and all that sort of thing. I think the relationship between a father and a daughter, or a father and a son, is simply stated one of the single most important relationships that two humans can have. And so starting off by saying that Marcellus is a father and he's a devoted husband, and he does those things really well. And then on top of that, as I know Marcellus to be an ethical man of high character, uncompromising integrity, he has this steadfast devotion to his clients, and he's known for having these gigantic rosters. And Marcellus has 100 clients. He has 80 powerlifting clients, and then he's got 20 clients that he does nutrition for. And so of his roster of 100 clients, he's got 15 internationals. And, the elite names, jump out at us. They jump off the scoreboard, if you will, like Michael C. and Shun Jabril, Chris Perez, Sean Noriega, Alex Luckow, Brandon Petrie, Jamar Royster, Aston Ruska, Bob Matthews, just to name a few. And then, of course, on the women's side, he's got Meg Hurlbert. He's got his Bree Williams, Leanne Lee. And so his roster is stacked. But in an age, Ryan, you've said this before, we live in this age where there's almost zero barrier to entry, right, into the powerlifting coaching realm. Anyone with an Instagram account can claim to be a coach, even when maybe they only have a very average understanding of basic anatomy and physiology and training principles. And then on top of that, they have zero ability or acumen to effectively run a business. And Marcellus has demonstrated a mastery of being able to do that. And so when we have a lot of people who might be popular coaches out there, but can't effectively run a business, I've never once, with a roster of 100 lifters, never once. I mean, largely, as Eric would know, it's a customer service, industry. And the coach needs to connect with the client on a personal level. And they also need to put out a good product, and they need to service the customer. I've not heard a single complaint. In fact, it's quite the opposite. His lifters rave about his customer service, his attention to detail, and his ability to connect with them, not only as a coach, but on a personal level as a friend. And then on top of all that, individually, he provides a ton of free information on his YouTube channel. And then more collaboratively and more recently, he's heading into his third year now with Powerlifting Now, where he puts together powerlifting information on a monthly basis, and they have a podcast and so forth. So yeah, I think for all of those reasons, Marcellus Williams is my 2024 Coach of the Year.
For me, this is a particular
It's a good
tough
pick.
one. Yeah, it's a really good pick. I mean, you look at some of the shooters he has on his roster. It's a good pick.
It's a very good pick.
This
I also have an honorable mention, and if you want to go now, or I can do that second.
Go ahead with your honorable go ahead with your honorable mention, sir.
This is something I think that Matt really highlighted importantly. I think sometimes people who are not coaches or haven't been coaching for a while or haven't actually thought about what coaching means don't understand that coaching is not about the X's and O's and programming. It's
Mhm.
not just about the attempt selection. It's not about if you're doing nutrition, just choosing three numbers to give to people. Coaching is about a relationship between two people. And the I laugh when people go, hey, do you think, these AI programs and these apps can replace a coach? Because that tells me immediately you don't know what a coach's job is. Or when I see a coach who makes sure that their Excel spreadsheets don't get out because they don't want to be copied, I immediately know that coach is probably not that good. Because if that's what they see their value as, the program that came out, rather than their critical thinking skills and their collaborative ability with athletes that goes into creating those programs, and that they think that just an Excel spreadsheet encapsulates the entirety of their skill set, they're not a coach. Um, Coaching is about building relationships, and nutrition is something that permeates your life all the time. And the hardest behavior change you can do, and I can tell you this as a competitive bodybuilder, a personal trainer since 2005, and a powerlifting and bodybuilding coach, and competitive bodybuilder and powerlifter who makes weight and also has to get really, really lean and has worked with many dual sport athletes since 2010, that you don't have a powerlifting nutritionist. A good powerlifting nutritionist is a nutrition coach. And I want to give a big shout out to Kedrick Kwan. Again,
Amen.
highly, highly biased. He is my PhD student. He's my friend. I've coached with him on the New Zealand national team. Um, but he is also a really, really good programming coach and just a good communicator and coach. I've watched him work through his own personal stuff in his life, which is his business to put out there, alongside doing his PhD in sports science on powerlifting while coaching at every single major event you could imagine. And it's hard to find top level lifters who he's not working with, at least on the nutrition side, but he also has many lifters at the highest level who he's working with for programming as well. He made the epic cut of the surprise 52 kilo win last year for Evie Corrigan to take the women's side. He's nutrition coach of Gustav Hedlund. He coaches a tremendous number, either on nutrition and or on powerlifting on both sides of it. And I know how much effort he puts into it. I have had calls at 11 p.m. from Kedrick, like, "Hey man, I got to talk," and I think something serious is going on in his life, and it's a lifter who is disgruntled with him, and he feels like he did something wrong, and it ends up turning into an 11 p.m. like coaching call because he's concerned about did I do the wrong thing here? So the level of care and effort and responsibility that he takes with his athletes, and the fact that powerlifting has gotten so competitive that we have people winning on body weight semi-regularly now, the importance of nutrition coaching really cannot be downplayed at this point. So I think as an honorable mention, I want to throw Reformance founder and New Zealand national team coach, as well as private coach Kedrick Kwan, because he's the whole package. Matt Gary would agree, I think, with me that he's also a very good game day handler.
Yep.
He's a good programming coach and he's an excellent nutrition coach, and all those things require communication, knowledge, and skills. And he has not been doing it that long. I remember taking him to 2018 World Championships in Calgary when he was first doing his surveys for his initial studies in his PhD and introducing him to people who he'd never met before, like Mike T, like some of the top lifters at that time, and him having to get over the nerves to be able to talk to them. And now these are his colleagues, and these are people who respect him and see him as a colleague. And you don't do that in a short span time period in an era where the sport is advancing at such a fast pace without being damn good at your craft. So anyway, heavily biased rant over as to my honorable mention, but I got to give some love to my boy Kedrick.
Kedrick was without question my honorable mention as well, and I can echo everything that Eric said. He's a personal friend. I love Kedrick, and yes, he was next in line.
Well, he was Rory's pick, and he's also mine.
Ah,
I'll snowball off this a little bit here. So
awesome.
Kedrick, whom Emil Krastev took silver. Kyoto obviously broke the world record, and those are powerlifting programming clients. And we all know how good Emil is and the progress that Emil's made with him. Kyoto as well, breaking that world record, living up to the hype. And in terms of nutritionists, Evie Corrigan winning worlds, Gustav Hedlund winning Sheffield, winning worlds, Jurgens winning worlds in a massive upset. Taylor Atwood, he can help you bulk down. He can also help you bulk up. Look what he's done with Taylor Atwood, an appropriate bulk, not just fat, and it's actually muscle mass used onto the platform. So he's actually swinging both ways. What he's done in terms of the nutrition game in powerlifting, Kedrick is become that guy. He's become the guy. So there's in terms of the programming, it's difficult for me. You got guys like Joey Flex, crazy resume. You got guys like Marcellus, crazy resume. You got upstarts coming up like John Song and other guys coming up. And what they're doing with some of these guys, phenomenal. I couldn't split it when I just thought about programming. I couldn't do it. I'm thinking like, what do I compare these guys' rosters? Especially when you look at some of the established brands like Marcellus and Joey Flex, whom have their rosters are ridiculous. And you look at the wins they have and titles they've won. Couldn't decipher. And then I thought, think outside the box here for a second. And I was like, oh my gosh, Kedrick. And it's true. Underrated game day skills as well as programming, as well as nutrition. I mean, he's I'm going outside the box here and I'm taking Kedrick. And in a class, this is a very, very difficult one. So if someone's gonna just read a post or hear a pick, they're like, you could debate it either which way. But if you listen to the actual podcast and what we're saying, agree with us. We know this is a difficult one. There's a lot of phenomenal coaches out there. I would be totally fine and am with the other various picks. Matt Scott Marcellus couldn't that I'm fine with that. If someone says Joey, if someone whomever, I'm fine with that as well. But this year, it lands for me on Kedrick, and we'll see what 2025 brings because we know Shell. The Shell project intrigues the shit out of me to bring Shell down to 66. And Penna's trash talking highlights how difficult this is. It's not how hard it is. A lot of people will say, you throw some of these guys any kind of strength program that we all know about, they're going to be strong, going to be world champions with or without you. But bring somebody down from 74 to 66 and make them win. How many people you feel confident about that? There's some people like, I don't give a fuck who coaches insert crazy level athlete. They're going to do amazing. Nobody's saying that with the Shell project. Do it. Bring Shell down and make him beat a murderers or the 66s are killers. Figure that out. And look what he's doing. That's crazy.
I have two things to say, and then we can move on to the next category, Ryan.
Yeah.
I think the argument of world champions are going to be world champions regardless of who their coach, so long as they don't do something stupid, is sometimes true. And I'll say that as someone who's coached a handful of world champions. And but much easier argument to make in 2015, 2016, 2017.
Sure. Yeah.
These days, it is not enough to be a really, really, really good lifter. It's too competitive. It's just too competitive. And the dynasties that we saw of the last decade are falling away. And there are very few people, and we can name them on like two fingers, basically, because the people we thought were going to be the dynasty players just from a couple of years ago have taken L's this year. There are some notable people who, like, we are amazing athletes, true outliers, but they did not end up coming out on top consistently because there's multiple ones of them. So it truly takes a generational great right now for that to be a true statement of. And there's just not that many at any given time. So that's one thing. The second thing I'll say, another really cool powerlifting moment I had was I got invited to speak at the British Powerlifting Coaches Conference this year outside of London. And there's some amazing work being done. I know this is true across nations with junior lifters, developmental lifters, novices. And there are coaches who specifically spend most of their time working with these young athletes and fostering and developing these programs, thinking about long-term athlete development. And these coaches have, frankly, just as hard and a very different job as working with a very high level lifter and bringing them up to be a world champion. It is something to like a ton of credit goes to coaches who can take someone who is very, very good potential to become a world champion and they get them there. I think that's something that's what you really look at, not just how many world champions does someone have, but how many people they take from a silver or a bronze to a gold. But totally different is taking someone who is not even done fully maturing or is in their very, very early stages of their career and setting them up on the right path. And they just don't get the same love because sub juniors and juniors don't get the same kudos. They don't get the same respect. And it's a very different skill set. And it's not quite as much of an accolade. But I do want to give a shout out to all the lifters out there, sorry, all the coaches out there who coach lifters who are at not necessarily the highest level, because that is the vast majority of people in our sport, and that is the future. And there's no way for us to easily quantify that because we can't go look at like the Western Ontario, junior class to see like, oh, who coached half of those lifters? Awesome, they're doing amazing things out in Western Ontario. You know what I'm saying? But I think these conversations always trend towards high performance sport. That's what gets eyeballs. That's what grows the sports, and more of those juniors come in. So it is not one versus the other, but it is very difficult to kind of give the appropriate amount of accolades to those unsung heroes. But I think they need to be acknowledged.
I will admit that I struggled with this one quite a lot. And one of the reasons that I find this one very hard to call is that we really only see the combined output of coach and athlete, and really only on specific days. What we don't see is probably the stuff that actually differentiates coaches from one another. That stuff happens kind of behind closed doors for the most part. And then there is an element of athlete success, or like a significant element of athlete success that has nothing to do with the coach, right? Like, frankly, it doesn't matter who would coach, say, Russell or he's going to be Russell or no matter who he is working with. It's not to say that a coach doesn't make a difference, but he would be an amazing athlete regardless. And so I don't think that, or at least when I'm talking about coach of the year, I'm not just looking at like, hey, who has the most world champions, who has the most athletes at Sheffield, like blah, 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 like whatever. I don't think that is sufficient. Like, I don't think that tells us enough about what a coach is doing or what is like contributing to that success. I'm not going to cop out of this answer, though. I am actually going to give an answer. And my
was a
answer
shot at
is,
Amelia, but that
yeah, maybe a little
wow.
bit.
Amelia's like, okay, all right. We talked off the record, and you. All right. But go ahead, Rory.
And my answer is Amelia. No, it's sorry.
Yeah. He softens it. He's like, my answer is me.
That big leader.
My answer is going to be Kedrick. Kedrick Kwan from Reformance. And the main reason for that is that he has, I don't know if he has established it or ridden the wave at like quite a good time, but Kedrick has ended up as sort of like the premier nutritionist for powerlifting over the last few years. And of course, that's like what I'm saying when I say I don't know if he's established that or sort of like ridden that wave, is that powerlifting is sort of professionalizing in many respects. And so athletes are going from sort of like 10 years ago, largely self-coached, to today working with not even just a powerlifting coach, but often a nutritionist or a dietitian, maybe some sort of rehab specialist, maybe some sort of like mental skills specialist, and so on and so forth. And so as that has happened, Kedrick has ended up working with a number of really fantastic athletes, and it seems like he's contributed a lot to their success. And that is why I'm saying that he is my pick for Coach of the Year this year.
Amelia.
I, okay. I'm going to be candid, and what I said to the boys off of the podcast is that I'm not sure this is something I have an answer for. I think there are a lot of good coaches that have made bad decisions. There are a lot of less good coaches that have made good decisions. Not specific people jumping to mind, but I think I've seen, and that's not just individual personal coaches, as coaching teams. I've seen coaching teams at championships that are notorious for making good decisions, make bad decisions this year, and vice versa. And, people have good days. And I think it's hard for me to say, you know, uh, an individual coach. I think a lot of credit should also go to the game day coaches, like the country coaches. So I don't know if I've got an answer. I will cop out with this one with that. I did say to the boys in the group chat, I said I'm not sure I have an answer to this. Although away from coaching in terms of powerlifting, which I think is fair enough if Rory went with, a nutritionist, somebody who I've just only heard good things about, which again, I'm still saying I'm not having an answer, but I will mention this person, which is Pay. I think she's known as the powerlifting physio on Instagram. And I've really only heard good things about athletes who work with her. I know that she works with Carlina. I think she's worked with Emil. Um, I'm pretty sure, but she's done a lot of the rehab work with a lot of good athletes, and I've only heard good things about her. Saying that, I don't. I stick with the fact that I don't have a coach of the year. There have been great decisions, there have been terrible decisions by great coaches and less great coaches. Do not DM me. I do not have an answer of who those great coaches and not so great coaches are, and I won't tell you.
This is the sports psychologist of the year in
Rory,
powerlifting. In power,
it's Rory. He nabbed that off
Awesome.
me, unfortunately.
of course. All right. Yeah, this was literally a contentious one. This was one of the toughest. A lot of them, my pick, I'm like, I could stand on. Let's rumble. But this is a tough one where I'm like, freak. This is hard. You look at what some of these coaches and some of their athletes have done, and yeah, and yeah. Anyways, enough said. I don't want to keep repeating ourselves, and I think I'll just echo everything we've already said. Let's move on to breakthrough star of the year, 2024.
Hmm.
Matt, what you got, sir?
I'm going to start with my breakout star of the year, female. Let's start with the ladies this time. It goes to Alba Bostrom. Came in fourth in Lithuania, just off the podium there in a very tight battle. She put what she needed on the bar, bit of a reach on the last deadlift. But up until that point, if I'm not mistaken, she was a perfect, let's see here. She was a perfect 8 for 8 going into that final lift and loaded up to try to snag the bronze from Sarah Naldi. And then what she did at Junior Worlds, Ryan, that you've talked about many, many times, just absolutely ran the ran the table there and out totaled pretty much everybody except I think one of the 84 pluses, right? Um, just unbelievable. And now, of course, she's been invited to Sheffield. So if she's not in your stream of consciousness now, you know, she certainly will be here in the next month. But for those reasons, yeah, for her performance at Worlds, just competing as a junior against these open lifters who are established and representing herself so well. And then going to Junior Worlds, which I know we don't put as much emphasis in terms of titles at the junior level, but what she did at the junior level, I mean, she was without question the North Star of the junior event. I mean, she outshined pretty much everybody, and it wasn't even close. So for me, she's the breakout star on the female side for 2024, Alba Bostrom.
Rick?
Well, I did not know we were doing male and female, so I
I
will
didn't
just
either.
go.
So
Oh, well, sorry to throw a wrench in your
Matt's
plans.
got two picks.
I've got
He's
two
spread
picks.
on us.
Oh, I have
So
no
it's
problem with that. I
okay.
I co-sign on that.
Okay.
For me, the pick I had though was Joseph Bornstein,
Mm.
and that is because I felt it felt like every month there was like a oh crap moment in the 83s going on. Like, oh, like obviously there was the upset of the year that we already talked about. Um, there was Adi Omasekin crushing it in Western Euros,
Mhm.
but Joseph Bornstein in just an incredible, I think it was the top four at the Raleigh were all 83s, and they were all totaling 10 times body weight or higher, 830 and
Mhm.
up. And sitting atop the pile is an 865 by a 21-year-old. What is happening? I don't want to get too much into the setting our sights on the future for 2025, but I think we're going to see some skyrockets battling it out, and it's going to be kind of a similar phenomenon to maybe what we see with Agata Sitko, but a couple of Agatas potentially going on here, where we had a really really tight 76. We had the clash of the big three. We had Jess Bittner, Carlina Tongotea, as well as Agata Sitko, and now Agata Sitko's on another planet, right? So and the difference is the age, and I think that's something we need to keep paying attention to.
Mhm.
And Joseph Bornstein is a junior and he's totaling 865. And we lost our minds just earlier that year when Russ had totaled 860. So to me, I think that is that's worthy of that title.
Okay, and for the women's, who did you have? Sorry.
The same one because I didn't know we were supposed to have two.
So sorry.
Okay, so
Just-
good. I have someone different.
Oh, that's good.
First off, agree with like both your picks are phenomenal picks. I'm gonna go with Agatha Shitko, and if I may, people will say, "Wow, we were aware of her previously." Sure, 100%. But in terms of the classic division, which is a stitch different, with all due respect to the equipped division, in terms of the classic, previously at Sheffield, she came in 11th. Previously, second at Worlds in the last two attempts at it. Previously, if I look at her 2023 that I have pulled up, she came in second at Girl Power, second at Worlds, and 11th at Sheffield. And that was her 2023. She didn't win a single event, gentlemen.
It's true.
2022, Eric, I don't got to tell you, she didn't win Worlds. She wasn't at that pinnacle yet. What she did in 2023 to go from that to the queen of powerlifting, we're all picking her for best lifter, everything she's done. Now we're wrapping our heads around the fact that, my God, she could be a three division world champ. It's all possible. All cards are on the table for her. What she accomplished in 2024, for me, made her a breakout star. Going into, we had bigger stars. Coming out of, I can't think of a bigger star. In terms of, on the men's side, breakthrough star, like for instance, let's compare Joey B to her. Joey B has me completely intrigued with what he might do in the future. But
Mhm.
in
Mm,
comparison to accomplishments and accolades, I mean, it's just what Agatha did all inside of 1 year was incredible. It's incredible. She stood out in such a major way. We got people like Leah Bavois. We got people like, we got some major hitters here. And she just outshined everybody and just captured everybody's attention and in multiple weight class. Are you a 76? Watch yourself. Are you an 84? Watch yourself. Are you 69? Watch yourself. It's like if you're 63 and up, you're on a hit list and it's I got the shit goes got your name. It's crazy. That's why she can dominate almost every conversation. Because you could talk about multiple weight classes and her name's got to be mentioned. That's quite the power move. That is quite the
Ryan,
power move. So for me, it's Agatha, and she's done it in a way that I don't think, and that's man or woman for me.
mm.
It's going to be Agatha, and
Ryan,
so there we go.
Ryan,
Sure.
you're I know earlier I said I'm always right. Um, I think you're right here because
What really?
I do, because I'll tell you why she wasn't my pick is because she's been on my radar for a long time, and
Yeah.
that's just my personal bias of who I was coaching. So, I worked with Jess Bittner from 2020 all the way through 2023, so I was constantly focused on Agata and
Mhm.
thinking about, okay, like which records is she likely going to get? Which records should we go for with Jess? It was, a little more between Carlene at that time. So, I had coached her through multiple battles with Agata and,
Mhm.
up at 4 a.m. cheering when they equal body weight and Jess takes the world title on the deadlift. So I think for me, she's always been an impressive threat, and it's just like more. But no, you're 100% right. As you go through all of that, I actually 100% agree. What she's done is a monumental leap from where she was, even though I personally had a lot of focus on her. So I do think that was probably just my personal experience coloring my pick.
That's where you two met, or we stop with Eric. Okay. Well, we'll stop with Eric. That's what do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, I agree with everything that Eric said, but I'm sticking with Alba as my female. And
Fair
on the
enough.
male side, since we're doing, I mean, Ryan, I know you're picking Agatha for both, right? I mean, because you weren't doing the
I
men,
wasn't
right?
doing the men's. I would have to.
Okay.
And I don't want to do a knee jerk reaction for the men's. Although
Yeah, fair enough.
Joey B, while not official world records and big
Right.
titles, has really captured
Hmm.
all my attention. And I think 2025, he'll probably like if he lives up, he'll probably end up being the breakthrough star.
So yeah, and the only thing I was going to say, so my pick for the male breakout star of the year is Ade Omasakin because he's done it. I mean, he's a junior world champion. He's done that at 74, and then he's moved up to 83. He's totaled 800 plus now 3 times. He's the man with the currently with the world record. He's done it under international judging. He's had to travel, etc. And again, the only knock against Joe, he's competed 16 times, and 9 of those have been in Florida. So he had, and I know the United States is a big country, but the furthest that he's traveled is to Nevada. Now, I guess he lives in Florida, presumably. That's a hike. The United States is large, but we talk about doing it with more significant travel. We talk about doing it with significant competition. Granted, he had a heck of a roster to compete against at Raleigh, but it wasn't necessarily head to head. It was points and this, that, and the other. So that's the only reason that he's kind of off my list. But I mean, clearly he's certainly on everybody's radar. But in terms of pure accomplishment and doing it at the highest in the international levels, I've got Adeos Omasakin.
I'm not gonna. No, we'll answer this one. So my answer for breakthrough star of the year is Ade. Um, I think he obviously put up an amazing performance at Westons. There was a little bit of us up in the air. I know Ryan and I were messaging back and forth, like, is it an official world record? Is it, and we were all trying to figure it out. And luckily it did end up being so. But, I think that performance really shook the boat of a weight class that was already had a lot of talk about it with Joe B and Russ and Durans. And so Ade joining the mix with that huge total and pushing up going into Sheffield, I think was a real breakthrough star.
Rory?
I, I don't know if this one is particularly close. I have to say Ade as well. Like he went from a 777.5, which don't get me wrong, very respectable total, but he went from 777.5 to 861. So it was like 85 kilograms or something in just about 12 months, exploding into the international scene. Admittedly, it was Westerns, probably like a little lower pressure than some other international meets, but like he does hold the current open world record. He increased it by like a reasonable margin. I don't think that there is anyone else who I could have in contention this year.
Fellas, let's move into the most impressive lifts, single lifts, squat, bench, and of course the deadlift. Let's begin with the squat. And Eric, what are your thoughts on this one?
I kind of probably already sent the message of what I was going to choose for this one. This is
Right.
a Gavin squat, that he did at NAPF 341. And it's because he has been scraping and clawing for that world record. And it got batted back and forth between him and Carlos earlier in the year. So it wasn't a head-to-head, which I do love, but I think the significance of how many times he had to squat and then had it taken away from him to get the 341. And it's a huge number, like that's a ridiculous squat, right? At 83. it's a ridiculous squat at 105. So it's yeah, that for me is the squat of the year. That one right there.
I mean, the storyline behind that squad is crazy.
Hmm.
I mean, you get no. How many people got a story? You could literally do a documentary on this guy chasing that squat world record, and the from worlds to Sheffield to like he's traveled all over the world, all the biggest events, and it's crazy. Two overturns, like getting it, the crowd going nuts to an overturn, the crowd goes nuts again, to like the storyline of it. If you're looking at it like that, you could say, well, this guy had a bigger squat, or that guy or that girl, or whatever you want to go. But you're like, tell me another more significant squat in all of powerlifting, a storyline around a squat. And I bet you more people have heard the Gavin Naden story and seen at least one of these events chasing it to him finally getting it. And everybody's like, he got it. He finally got it. It happened right until the day where they go all in and do a very on Matt Gary approach of going all in. I forget what the freaking squat record jump. It was crazy. It was a crazy jump. It was such a Gavin Aiden burn your ships move,
Hmm.
right down to that. The storyline in terms of Time Magazine has Man of the Year, and it doesn't mean like you're the best Man of the Year. It means you dominated the headlines and storylines for that year, and everyone thinks about you. Because like they have some controversial Man of the Year, but it dominated everybody's imagination and captivated us. And in terms of a squat with a story like that, if you're going that route, the Time Magazine style, tell me a better storyline that captured everyone's was talking about. That's a huge one because that story's drug over several years, almost cheating because it's such a long storyline. It's got its own story itself. Nice pick, Matt.
What
Sorry, go ahead.
question? Are we going male, female, or just one pick for these?
I,
I was going
I've
one pick, but if you want to do, wait, don't
oh,
say a female yet because you might chew up someone else's
I,
pick.
I I will say nothing. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, yeah. You could go both, but yeah, let's see
I,
what
I-
we
I'll
all
just I'll
got.
plant that and then let Matt go. And if he wants to do two,
you guys are
yeah.
killing me because I did male and female for all of these.
No, go ahead,
See,
and it's good. It's good discussion. It's good
Okay.
yeah,
discussion.
All right.
go for it.
All right. So my for best squat male of the year, I'm going Austin Perkins, 318 kilos at a body weight of 73.2. I mean, 4.3 times body weight. Austin Perkins uh, at Powerlifting American Nationals. Just an unbelievable milestone number to achieve. The thought of a 74 kilo lifter squatting 700 pounds is
Mm.
just unfathomable, right? I mean, we got people up two weight classes who aren't squatting that much. And so that's my pick for my most impressive squat male of the year. And then undoubtedly, it's Sonita Mulu, for the
Yeah.
female squat of the year. I mean, now, and it's the 311 that she did at Worlds. I mean, she did 300.5 at Sheffield, and then she comes to Worlds and squats 300 plus twice. Absolutely amazing. She squats 301 on her second attempt, and then goes 311 on her third attempt. And oh, by the way, that is the heaviest drug tested raw squat by a female of all time. So if you're
It's
going to
also
make
the
me
heaviest
pick,
untested.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's mind blowing. And she comes into these meets and, oh, I hurt my back a couple weeks out and all that kind of stuff. And Sonita, I love you. We talk in the DMs, all due respect. I'm not listening to these back injuries that you have because every time your back is broken, you come in and shock the world even more. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that, of course, in a complimentary, tongue-in-cheek way. But, don't wish injury upon anybody. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to make me pick one, then I'm going to go with Sonita's because it's the heaviest of all time. But since I was doing male and female, I've got Austin and then I've got Sonita.
Well, sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
Oh man, I just want to talk more about Sunita's squat. I think
Go,
so.
go,
Some
go.
good numbers here. Okay, okay. If you look at the squat world records in the women's division currently right now, there is a pretty measured spread as you go from weight class to weight class to weight class. Now, obviously, Sunita is well into the 84 pluses. She is a very muscular woman. She weighs a lot more than the 84 cutoff. But when you look at how they step up, it's 165 in the 47 class, 175 in the 52 class, 188 in the 57 class, 213 in the 63s, 225 in the 69s, 230.5 in the 76s, 249.5 in the 84 pluses, and then it's 311, right? It's not going up 15 keys, 10 keys, or the biggest jump before that with 188 to 213. It goes from 249.5 to 311. That's
Yeah.
more than 60 kilos. It's a ridiculous outlier lift compared to the rest of the field. And I just think, yeah, that I'm glad you made Matt go first, because if I had a male female pick, obviously, Sunita would be the choice for the women's, because it's just insanity. It's insanity.
I only went with most significant squat period, male or female, and I got Sunita. I got some honorable mentions I'll throw out there, but Sunita, first woman in 2024, she broke a new milestone, the first woman to squat 300 kilos, which can't be understated. Whenever you reach these milestones, we got to celebrate them when you hit those round numbers. And then to Matt's point, from being the first woman to do 300 to doing over 300 twice in the same day,
Same day.
absolutely bonkers. Doing 311, 311, biggest, whether you're tested or untested, biggest period. Absolutely phenomenal. She pulled a Ray Williams to actually be able to do absolutely phenomenal. And then if you're like, wow, you did over 300 kilos same day, you're going to burn out. How are you going to sustain what went on to win the title and total 731? So forget about it. Don't worry. She's fine. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's got to be Sunita. And for what it's worth, she squatted 700 pounds in the gym and is almost assuredly going to do this at Sheffield, which will be a new milestone in terms of hitting 700 pounds by a woman. And 300 kilos was 661. Like, the progress is nuts. The progress is incredible by Sunita. When I think of, nobody got me this pumped up in the squat like Sunita did. Nobody got all of us talking like Sunita.
Mhm.
It's crazy. The progress from one meet to the next to, or here I am at 300 kilos. Well, now 300 kilos is something I do twice in the same day. Well, now I'm looking at 700 pounds and, just leaving the rest of humanity behind. So for me, it's Sunita. In terms of my honorable mentions, I got Perk just like you, Matt. You had Perk as your male. And if I pressed you, you would have been forced to take him as mentioned behind Sunita, I think you were saying. That's exactly what I got. I got Perk, 700 pounds squat as a 74, absolutely ridiculous. I remember when Russell Orhe and Jamar were 83s, looking to be who's going to be the first to squat 700 pounds. A few years later, Perk at 74 kilos is squatting 700 pounds, 318 kilos. Phenomenal squatter in Perk. He's a close honorable mention. Anatoly Novopitsmani squatting 370.5 at Worlds, and I believe that's also an untested record. Phenomenal. I mean, the guy's an absolute monster squatter, two-time best lifter at the World Championships. Phenomenal, and he had to give up his title to Ashton, not without a fight. And he gave everybody a scare when we're all watching the squat event, and we're like, "Is this going to be a battle?" When he squatted 370.5, it let you know, well, don't blink. It ain't over. It's not going to be without a fight if he's going to give up his title. Jesus squatting 478. How can that not be mentioned? At Sheffield, Jesus doing phenomenal things at super heavyweight as he usually does, but misses out, if for no other reason, because Sunita's hitting milestones like 300 kilos, chasing milestones like 700 kilos, and Perk 700 kilos as 74, again, another milestone. Whereas Jesus and Anatoly, phenomenal squats, but not historic milestones that we just couldn't wrap our heads around. And honestly, 700 pounds by 74, can't wrap my head around it. 300 kilos and up by a woman, previously couldn't wrap my head around it. And here we are. So those gentlemen did phenomenal, and maybe in any other given year, but these other people are hitting literally historic milestones. Difficult to argue.
I mean, the same person holds both of them to me, and for me, there's no doubt in my mind that it's Sunita. And there's the huge squat that she did at Worlds, but even glossing over that, she did 700 pounds a couple of days, like this week or last week in training. So I think it was like what 318 kilos. And it was nice. I cannot stop being impressed by Sunita. She is phenomenal, and especially when it comes to the squat. So there was no doubt in my mind that the most impressive squat of the year was going to go to Sunita, first, second, and third place.
Linchpin.
Sonata. I would like if I'm going to call a specific squad, it'd be the 311 from Worlds. And if I will throw a male name out there as well, just to mention another name. Anatoly's 370.5 at the World Championships was I think that was pretty special as well. But if I do have to pick one, it is Sunita.
Matt, who is the number one bench for you of the year?
Well, so naturally I did a male and female again. Sorry to ruin the party. But this time I'll start with the men. I think on any given year, the low-hanging fruit for me, and I did a lot of research on this, by the way, as I normally do, because I'm a numbers geek. Presumably we're not talking about bench press specialists, right? We're sticking to kind of powerlifting. So and obviously the flavor on this podcast is usually classic. So I went with classic. I think on any given year, we could give it to Jonathan Kaiko, right? On any given year. I mean, he's held the world record in the 93 kilo weight class since 2021, right? And he continues literally every time he competes to beat himself. He chips himself. He makes 3 benches. It is like Jonathan Kaiko to set a world record in the bench when he competes. Simply stated. But he's my runner-up. I'm going to give the 2024 most impressive bench by a man to Devin Williams, who bench pressed 261 kilos. That's 575 pounds at the NAPFs in Arizona this year. So that was international judging, breaking my good friend Dennis Cornelius's record of 253 kilos, which he held from Worlds in Killeen in 2016. And so that world record has been on the books for a while, and Devin took it, and he actually broke it twice, because he broke the record on his second attempt and then upped it on his third. So for me, for the men, it's Devin Williams. And should I go ahead and pick my female as well, Ryan, or are we just doing men?
Let's put a pin just so we don't burn possibly. Let me just say, I love that you did the old switcheroo on us last second. You had me in the first half, and I'm like, he's going Keiko. You seen that, Eric? You guys are both leveling up. All right, Eric, who's your pick, sir?
No, I think should I just do just one and then
you got 2 then? You
well, I've been trying to rapidly catch up, because he pulled
I
the
fast one on us. Because I threw a wrench into the whole podcast.
Exactly. No, but I'll just start with who my pick was without thinking about things after we thinking about a men and women's side. My pick was Agata Shitko as a bench presser, because in the year of 2024, she set the bench press world record in the 69, 76, and 84 kilo class.
Right.
And insanity of all insanities, between those 3 records, it's a 2 kilo spread.
Yeah.
Which means she retained the hardest lift to retain while cutting down within 2 kilos. That makes 0 sense. 0 sense. And you know how I was talking about the leap from the 84 to the 84 plus squat record? Alexis Jones' best bench is 167, the current record. And that's only 11 kilos higher than Agata Sitko's 84 kilo record, which she did, by the way, at 77. So
right.
What I mean, there is no other female choice, in my opinion.
So that was Rory's pick. That's my pick. I got an honorable mention, though. That's a man. So maybe this kind of works. So we're going to smooth it out here. But you're right. Like, Agatha is an absolute monster. I remember taking the bus back to the hotel after Sheffield. I think it was the first Sheffield, and talking to Agatha, and she had mentioned, like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I lost so many kilos off my bench with this new bench rule. I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back. Well, spoiler alert, she's come back pretty flippin' strong, and look at us talking about her now. So she worked it out. Same with Alba Ballstrom. She was somebody that, historically speaking, big arch, wouldn't have the depth, and people are adjusting. Meg Scanlon. I mean, it's going to go on and on. Alba doing what she did, Meg doing what she did, actually has a nice clash at Sheffield, but we'll leave that for the look ahead. But anyways, Matt, this is going to shock you. Let me give this honorable mention, kind sir. I'm going to go with Kodama, the
Oh,
44-year-old bench only,
yeah.
44 years old in the 83 kilo class, bench 231 kilos. That's 509 pounds.
Yeah.
This gentleman has been competing since 2001.
Mhm.
That's 23 years ago. His first world championship was 2002. And in terms of, we're all praising Agatha Shitko for, reinventing herself under the bench rule. Imagine the rules this man has done in equipped, classic, bench rule, no bench rule, at 44 years old. The
Yeah.
adaptation he's made since 2002, his first world title, all the way till now. Talk to me about a versatile bench press. In and out of equipment, bench rule or not, 44 years old, no excuses made. The guy's an absolute phenom. Just for comparison, the world record in the three lift is 218.5. He's at 231. He's
Yeah.
44. He's 44. God bless. Hopefully, I'm not butchering his first name. Daiki Kodama.
I
I
think
think
it's
that's
Nike,
right. Or it's
but I could be
Eh,
wrong.
it's close.
I think Eric's eyes narrowed. That could be wrong.
I think it's Dike, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Okay.
And
Well,
and and
anyways,
and just for fun, I'm not certain we're pronouncing the last name correctly
Probably not.
because let me just give you a fun example. The car manufacturer that we all know is Toyota.
yeah.
I've spoken to some Japanese people and they laugh at us Americans and Westerners who call it Toyota. It's not Toyota, it's Toyota, is how it's pronounced. So I don't, we call him Kodama. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. The stress might be on a different syllable. It might be Kodoma. But anyway, we're
Yeah.
all talking,
I
Tomato, tomato.
yeah,
we're all, we're
I'm
all
pretty
talking
sure it
about,
is Daiki because I've heard people in Japan say, and I'm probably mispronouncing the correct pronunciation, but I think that's
yeah,
closer than Daiki.
it's,
So
yeah,
I'll tell you what, fellas,
it's,
respect goes across all languages, huh? He'll
he's,
he'll like no matter how you say his name, it's in the conversation. How you like that? How you
yeah.
like that? So hats off to him. Do you guys got any other did we do both from you guys?
Yeah,
Matt,
I
did
was
you have
just
another
gonna.
one?
Well, of course, Agatha is my female. I
Okay.
mean, benching 154 at a body weight of 68.9, which actually equates mathematically to 2.23 times, which she then did 160 at 71.5, which is the same multiplier. And then I would just give an honorable mention to Alexis Jones just because she's got the world record at 167 in the
yep.
84 pluses, which was the biggest bench at Worlds. And so that was a pretty cool moment for Alexis. But yeah, if I've got to pick one for the females, it's Agatha, unquestionably.
How about Rory? How about your bench of the year?
Probably Chunchia fans. Was it 213 at the World Championships was really, really good. Like there was a lot of fantastic bench presses. Actually, there was a lot of I was going to say at that World Championships, but frankly, there was a lot of fantastic bench presses this year. But yeah, the 213 at 74 from Chinese Taipei was really nice. That was very memorable to me.
How about you, Amelia?
My answer for this, I mentioned already today, is quality and quantity. Agata beating three weight class world record benches this year
Yeah.
in the 69, 76, and 84, I just think is insane. So Agata's my answer for bench.
Deadlift of the year. Eric?
Yeah, so again, I had just one. I didn't have a male and female, so I'm just going to give my first pick, and then we can talk more if we come back around. But for me, that was Natalie Lalai with her crossing the 600-pound barrier at Worlds with a 273 world record, uh, deadlift record, which I thought was really, really cool to see. We saw a lot of women's records fall, and that deadlift was pretty badass. So that's mine.
Just recently in the gym, did 275 for a double. It's insane that she's doubling her world record, more than doubling her. Like it's more than
Hmm.
her world record, and she's doubling it. So put a pin in that conversation. She also took 322 and a half off the ground mid shin in a misload, like well over 700 pounds. I don't know. I have. We were all excited. She did 600, and she's taking 700 mid shin, like in a horror going for gold type situation. It's nuts. I don't know.
You
She's
know,
something special.
Matt, Gary, and I have talked about this. It's hard to calculate an estimated max off a deadlift, especially like a doubles and triples, because that second rep is sometimes easier than the first. But 275 for a double, what do you think, Matt? Like low ball it, 285, 290, 1 RM?
Yeah. The only knock on her, and I just say this because the game day coach comes out in me, is their attempt selection. So I think, Natalie, if you're listening, all due respect, you are supreme tip of the spear. I think if you opened up the attempts a little bit more, you'd actually pull even more. I think the second attempt has traditionally been a little bit too heavy, and it takes a little off the top end because it just uses up too much gas in the tank. So yeah, it's hard to extrapolate, Eric, to your point, but yeah, I think she has a lot more if she opened lighter, took a springboard attempt on the second, and then
I mean, what
more.
throws it for a loop when we're trying to estimate off her double is when you see her take 322 and a half off the ground.
Yeah, right.
Like, did you guys see that? It's crazy.
It's
Yeah.
also something to be said for the power of belief, right? Because she
Mm.
didn't realize
Right.
that's what was loaded. So she's figures, I got this. This is going up. This is
Yeah.
mine. You know what I mean? And she walks up there deliberately with intention and pulled that sucker to, I mean, it's mind
Crazy.
blowing that she got it off the ground and then
Like,
realized, oh, by the way, there's an extra blue and change on here or something.
we were excited when she broke into the 600s and was the first to take IPF world
Yeah.
record in the 600s. She was attempting into the 700s. And it wasn't a tug. What the hell is that all about? To your point, Matt, she had no idea, so this should go. So she revved that engine and went. And that bad boy came off the ground mid shin, like an actual mislift might look. Like it was an appropriate mislift. Like, oh, yeah, people miss there all the time. Nothing crazy. Until you
Right.
look at the weight and be like, nothing crazy. Young lady, like that was the. It's crazy. All right. Yes, it is crazy. So I don't know where she's going to end up in 2025. God knows. But her doubling 275 now totally makes sense. And she could probably do more.
Yep.
We'll see. A little belief, spread out those attempts, go all in on your third, and let's see what happens. What do you got, Matt?
So naturally, again, I did a male and female, and for the same reasons, I had Natalie Lalai as the best female deadlift of the year. 600-pound threshold there, doing it at IPF Worlds. I mean, shout out to Brittany Schlater. Love Brittany, phenomenal lifter, phenomenal competitor. Pulled 273.5, but she did it at CPU Nationals, and so that's more of a home game type competition, if you will. I don't know where she traveled from to get to. I know Canada's a huge country as well, so there may have been significant travel involved for Brittany, but for Natalie to do it to the international standard at a world championships just counts a little bit more. But shout out to Brittany, because 273 and a half
Yeah.
is now the heaviest raw drug tested deadlift we've ever had by a female. So it'll be fun to see, presumably, those two, lock horns again in the deadlift at Worlds. And so for the men's side, may I, Ryan? For the men?
Go ahead, buddy.
So let's go through the honorable mentions first. I think, on any given year, you could, I mean, Shell Backlund did a 340 kilo deadlift at 73.7, which is just incredible. 4.61 times body weight. And then we've got a guy who's a little bit lesser known, but Eric might know him, Dion Louis from New Zealand.
I do know Dion.
Dion,
59.
275.5 at 58.9 kilos, which is 4.67. Albeit, again, at a meet in New Zealand, so a home game type of competition for Dion, but just an extraordinary pull. But my most impressive deadlift of the year for men is going to be Sanchez Dillon, 400 kilos at IPF Worlds at a body weight of 104.2. And then, oh, by the way, more recently at British Classic that I just attended in Wolverhampton, he pulled 408 and a half at the exact same body weight, 104.2, but it was turned down on a 2-to-1 decision. And I was sitting right there, pretty much where the jury was sitting. And to me, that was a good lift, buddy. That looked good.
Yeah.
I will say this, your opener was not to standard. I didn't feel like his opener was good. His knees looked bent. And I know Sanchez sometimes has this, his lockout can be, his arms are so long and his torso kind of shortens. So it gives the impression that his shoulders come a little bit forward and sometimes his knees don't look entirely straight. I will say that. So his opener, I agreed with the call on the platform, but he went up anyway from his opener. I think he opened at 370 and then he jumped to 390. And I did think that the second and third deadlifts that he did at British Nationals were to standard, but the one that's on the books that we're giving him credit for is the 400 at 104.2, which is just, it's mind blowing. I mean, I guess it's at this point, the second or third heaviest deadlift in the IPF of all time for the men. And he's doing it at 104 kilo body weight.
So, yeah, same. I have the same pick for the men if I was to give one. And just the idea that someone is chasing a 4 times body weight deadlift who is a 105 is redonkulous. Yeah. That makes no sense, when you look at it from that perspective. Like pulling 4 times body weight is insane no matter what your body weight is, but it's a whole lot less insane when you're talking about a 66 or a 74 kilo lifter. But when you're talking about someone who has a 3-digit number for their body weight in kilos, pulling nearly 4 times body weight, whoa, that is bizarre and in an amazing way. So yeah, totally agree.
In terms of him chasing goals, not only the 4 times body weight, but the biggest deadlift in IPF, period. Oh, yeah, and he's in the 105s.
Yeah.
He's in the 105. He's not even a 120, let alone 120 plus. He's a 105. How often do we have a conversation about the biggest lift in all the IPF for any of the disciplines, and you're going down 3 weight classes? Eric, you know how special that is because your girl Jess did it. And that's what
I would also say that the deadlift is a unique lift in that way, and that you actually don't see it. It actually does taper around 105, and it historically has done that. Right. Not only have I had that with Jess, but also the main rivalry at the international level that Bryce Lewis had was with the Terminator himself from Poland, who also had the heaviest.
Yes. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Becky.
Yeah, you
Digging
forget
back into the bag, Mr. Deadlift.
Where's Becky, Mr. Deadlift? He had the heaviest deadlift in the IPF. I believe he might have done that in 2019. Is that right, Matt, or was it 2018? I think he pulled it in a European.
I think you're right.
Meet.
Yeah, he did.
Yep. He pulled 400, I want to say. And I don't think it necessarily was a world record, but it was a local meet, and he did that. I want to say he actually might have done that at 100. You know what? I don't know why I'm speculating like we don't have the internet. All of us are over 40, clearly. Let me look up Christoph Wierzbicki's numbers, and I'll get you back.
Driving listeners mad.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
You're like, no, he was at 90 kilos, but it was insane. So give me one moment, and I will tell you.
Yeah, Sanchez Dillon, though, is my pick as well. And the fact that he got 411 to his knees in March at Arnold Classic, going for the biggest deadlift in all of IPF is freaking ridiculous. And the first 105 to take the deadlift world record into the 400s. He is a legit threat for that getting the biggest deadlift in the IPF for sure. Sanchez Dillon, and he's kind of sprung out of nowhere with this. Just an absolute phenom on his deadlift alone. Vicious 105er.
And I will say this also, the 408 and a half that he did it more recently at British Nationals that was called on his third attempt. It was tough, don't get me wrong, but it was not lit. There was a couple kilos left. So to your point, Ryan, depending upon, what happens, I mean, we're, looking into the crystal ball into the future in Germany potentially, but it'll be interesting to see.
Eric,
All right.
Eric's probably struggling with spelling for Zbicki and Christoph. Let me tell you, you got
Yeah,
to
I
buy a
got
couple vowels, my friend. It's
I got some stuff. Christoph, where's Becky? We got it.
yep,
So he has pulled 400 on a number of occasions at under 100 kilos of body weight.
yeah.
He did it in 2017 at the Polish Classic Powerlifting Cup. He pulled 400 and then attempted 408.5 and did not get it. And he was 99.6 kilos.
mm,
Um, in international competition, I think the heaviest he pulled in the IPF was in it raw. He has done over 400 in single ply. Was I want to say 380. But since then, competing in other federations and in single deadlift meets, he pulled 4.5 raw at 8.1 in Czechia and the deadlift challenge 3. So I mean it's a little different when it sounds like a deadlift only competition. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure that was a 2 hour weigh-in either. So because he has competed both 105 as always as a light 105, but also more heavy recently. But yeah, Christoph is still throwing around ridiculous deadlift numbers. He pulled 440 in a meet in Poland back in October in WPA at a body weight of 107 in the 110 class. So he's still in his mid 30s, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see more and more deadlifts. But I think he is done with the IPF. So nonetheless,
thank you, sir. Yeah, I think he's done with the IPF. Right.
So I have two names written down for this. Again, like bench, like Rory said, it was an amazing year of deadlifts. We saw the 400 barrier broken so many times. It was incredible. And I think it was what, last year, maybe the first time we saw it, or maybe the year before. And I think it just takes one person and to show it's possible with anything. So I have down Sanchez Dylan in the 105s, who obviously deadlifted 400, the lightest person to do that yet. Holding out for Enahoro for the 400, which would be insane. But Sanchez, I have down, as well as Tima Samkaradze, in his last year as a junior, pulled, I think, was it 411.5 at Junior Wilds, his second attempt. Um, so those two were the ones that immediately came to mind for me in terms of deadlift.
Rory, how about you?
Sanchez was kind of my runner up. Actually, the 400 kilo from him was amazing. That was really really cool. But my pick for best deadlift of the year is actually Natalie Lalai's 273 kilogram. Obvious Australian lifter. I believe that was her first international, or 273 at the World Championships. Just weapon of a deadlift. That was really really cool. I believe that is the heaviest deadlift by a woman in the IPF. Just like no qualifiers. Sorry, raw deadlift, one qualifier.
Okay, let's move on to Battle of the Year. I'm intrigued if someone's going to get something different than what I got. Eric, you got a cheeky little smile on your face. What you got there, kiddo?
well, it's hard to look past this one because I believe it's the first time it's ever happened where everyone showed up, where we had a tie on body weight in the 66 kilo class. That was just a completely epic outcome where it really speaks to what I was talking about earlier, how at this stage in the game of powerlifting broadly, just how competitive things are for there to be a three-way tie in a hotly contested division. Um, I mean, it's insane. That battle was extremely tight. It was up there with the 84 plus of the year prior and that year as far as some of the best battles that have ever been done. And I thought it was just really interesting. A lot of hype went into it. It's been really great to see some of the lighter weight classes on the men's side getting more love and the 66s. So yeah, the battle between Kasim Sand, Jonathan Garcia, and Pana, where they all totaled 707.5 and body weight determined the podium, is my pick. I thought that was really, really incredible to watch. And there were, and don't get me wrong,
Sorry.
like to kind of give some honorable mentions, like there was a lot of other really cool battles, like the one we brought up earlier, the biggest upset in the 83s. Even Austin not completely blowing away the 83s and having to really think about things with Kel and needing to actually do all 9 attempts, it not being, a total breeze through. Emil Krastev just by literally a finger's breadth losing the 93s to Gustav and then tying on body weight. And then I think there was a tie in the 105s as well between Anatoly and Ashton, although Ashton probably had more. There was a lot of good battles. Let's just put it that way in this year. And but I think the one that tops it was the three-way tie in the 66s.
I think you just coined a new phrase, by a finger's breadth.
It sounds legit, doesn't it? Like people have been saying that forever,
I
but
was
I
like,
don't
you
think
made me
anyone
think
ever
about it.
has.
It's like when we had that goat episode that you're talking about, John Haggles talking to you, and Matt decided to recoin it and say, or boat, if you will, the best of all time. And then after that, it became people were putting boat emojis and
Boat.
comments, and it
Let's
became like boat.
go.
He's the boat. And some
It's the
people are like, what
boat.
the hell is this coming from? And Matt can't recoin the new phrase. Um, Matt, do you got something different? What do you think?
I'll just, well, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with what Eric said. It's the 66 kilo battle at Worlds, and me being the black sheep of the podcast, if you will. I did a male and a female, but if I got to come down to one, then that is clearly the one, right? A body weight podium in the 66 kilo class. As Eric said, runner up, I would probably have the 93 kilo battle at Worlds. And just past that, I would have the three-way battle for bronze in the 69 kilo class that was between Marta Jenner, Gabby Martinez, and Annie Nelson. That was just an extraordinary fight for the podium. Obviously, the front runners were Corolla and Leah, and we kind of knew or assumed, if you will, that they were going to go 1-2. And so, the rest of the field was just kind of fighting and scrapping and, clawing their way, if you will, into the bronze medal position. And Marta Jenner, to her credit, missing her second and third squat. and then going 7 for 9. So finishing a 7 for 9 day, whereas Annie and Gabby did well in the front half and then missed their last deadlift. And it just goes to show how important it is to make that final deadlift. And Marta did that and was able to get on the podium. And then just one more honorable mention that I would include was the 63 kilo battle at Worlds for silver. You had Meg Scanlon winning, but then you had Char Bernardi of Italy and Sarah Naldi fighting with virtually identical attempts here. I mean, and only 2.5 kilos separating those two women was just an extraordinary battle there for silver. And then obviously Sarah taking third because she came in 2.5 kilos under, but they both went 9 for 9. So you had 18 out of 18 there, and it was just exemplary lifting. So, but if we're picking one, it's the 66 kilo battle.
I'll say this. I've been commentating since 2016. It's the best session I've ever commentated on. It's the best session I've ever seen. And there's only one right answer. And any other pick is a hipster's pick. Okay. Someone's trying to be cool, trying to be that guy. It's the 66s.
Yeah.
It's only the 66s. We've never seen anything like it. The only other time it was obviously the 63s 2022, but that's Leah Bavola didn't make it onto the platform. If Leah Bavola had made it on the platform and then you got that, fine, let's talk. But that's not the same. That's the equivalent of the 66s doing this and Kasim saying never made it there or whatever. There's nothing was left on the table with these gentlemen. And then the supporting cast off the podium. When you got Joe Jordan, Kyoto was, I remember him on squats, the way he jumped forward and yelled at the crowd, and the crowd went crazy after his third squat. And you felt the momentum was real behind him. He was a threat. When the supporting cast gives you that,
yeah,
and then the cast on the podium is that, no. There's only ever been one. And don't
There's
let
a
anybody tell you
universe.
otherwise.
There's a universe where that was a four-way tie, with the people involved in that fight. The couple things go a different way. Yeah, it was razor's edge tight.
Mhm.
A fun fact in that battle as well, the top five lifters were flawless during the bench. They all went 3 for 3. And that's rare at that
Mhm.
level because we usually see someone tipping over in the bench press,
Mm.
and missing a third attempt. And so your top five lifters all went. I mean, it was an extraordinary session. Just a lot of drama. Chips, or well, there wasn't chips in play, but world records in play. It was extraordinary.
Obviously, Penn is an alternate for Sheffield, and on top
Yep.
of that, all three of them are making it for sure to World Games. So we're going to see this for sure at the very least World Games, and then obviously the World Championships, and
Oh my God,
it's
like
going to be
we've
good.
mentioned that like a couple of times, but three-way tie on total coming down to body weight. Um, I don't know what else I can say. Like Amelia was saying before, it was so good, and it was right at the beginning of Worlds. It's sort of obviously all of Worlds was fantastic, and if you ever get the opportunity to go and you haven't been, you should definitely go. But like that was just such a great way to start the week. It wasn't quite the start of the week, almost start the week, and I loved the competitiveness of things coming down to body weight, and people coming down to sort of final deadlifts to move into position and things like that. Um, Exhibition lifts are cool and exciting, but I want to see people go head to head and be the best power lifters, and I think that's what we saw come out in that battle.
Amelia, you got another pick besides this one, or is it the 66s?
It's hard for it not to be the 66s because, we've mentioned Russ and Durans, and that was really exciting to watch. But I think a lot of people didn't kind of clock onto it until towards the end that Durans was so close. Whereas I think the whole time during the 66s, everyone was aware how important every kilo was. Um, I also very thoroughly always enjoy the deadlift battle just alone when it comes to the 84 plus women because they're all incredible. But if we're talking about a weight class as a whole, it's hard not to go with the 66s at Worlds. A bit more of a local one at Nationals this year, the 120s in GB was pretty incredible. We had Tony Cliff, Nonso, Indy, and Mo all kind of going for those top three. So that's more of a, homegrown decision, but overall I'll agree with Rory.
Fellas, you know what? Let's take a quick 2 minute pee break, return, and I'll ask you your moment of the year. And gentlemen, this moment does not have to be a single lift,
Yeah.
particular session. It could be a conversation, it could be a backstory, it could be whatever the hell you want it to be. Your moment of the year. Let's do a quick 2 minute pee break though before this one. Fellas, I had told this story already, but if we're talking about a moment, there are a few times that I get rattled quite like this. Now, I've had some moments on the podcast where I'm talking to people. Just recently, the Sunita story really rattled me.
Mm.
I've had moments like this, just even on the holiday special with the fellas, 4 hours deep. And at the end, we were talking about what we're grateful for. Got a little emotional there. That can hit you. Those moments come in terms of conversation. But this is a moment that I still can't even wrap my head around and fully explain. Like it, when I tell the story, people, when I tell, they don't understand, and I can't give them an answer what this means. And I don't know if you gentlemen can either. So here it is. Jerns Kingamu, when he came out for that final deadlift to beat Russell Orhe in the biggest upset of the year, and by far the greatest sports moment of his career, and maybe the moment of the year. You guys all remember the impact after that final pull. It was insane. He made that pull and afterwards broke down in tears I remember rushing back after the session, and I seen him in the warm-up room. And he was, I mean, over the top crying. And I did the old collar tie. He did a collar tie on me. I'm using wrestling MMA terms. And we pulled each other in. So we're right against each other's temples, talking that close. And he's crying uncontrollably. And he said, and he's shaking. And he's like, I heard him. I heard my boy. I heard him, Ryan. And I was like, I know, man. That's amazing, dude. That's amazing. You dad was a crazy show. And he heard his son cheering for him to make that final pull. And what that must have meant to him to hear his son in that noise, the boisterous in a moment like that, to hear his son cheering for his dad to hit that final pull. What a moment. And seeing him crying what it meant to him. And I left. And afterwards, and I know he what it must have meant because he uncontrollably emotional about it. And afterwards, somebody, when I resaid that story, somebody told me, Ryan, his son is back home. He's not here. And I had to double back to Jurgens and ask him. And he swears to God, I heard my son. And if you've seen Jurgens in the warm-up room afterwards, uncontrollably shaking and emotional, you believe it. This isn't just a story. If you put $1 million on the table and said, you think he heard his son? He heard his son. I'm pushing all the chips to the middle of the table and betting on it. I've never seen anything like it. And 100% believe it. And rattled me when somebody told me that. Shivers. And for me, it's been a hot minute since I've experienced something like that. And still can't wrap my head around it. And I still think about it. And I don't know what it means. And that moment is the moment of 2024 for me. Well, what's your moment, sir? You've had a lot.
Are we going to me or are we going to Eric?
Oh, you passing it off to Eric? You can.
No,
You can
your mic cut out right when you said Matt. So this was
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all good. I read your lips, so I know
Did
you.
you look at
Yeah.
Matt? What are you thinking?
All right, mine's a little bit different. I think, yeah, that's I love hearing that story, and that indeed was a moment, and that whole situation with Jurgens upsetting Russ could arguably you could just take that and characterize that as we have that as the upset of the year. Clearly, it can also be the moment of the year. Because of how shocking and how monumental it was. And it creates this seismic shift, if you will, in the sport. And this ripple effect just sent shockwaves throughout the community. But my moment is actually a series of moments. And I'm going to sound like the ultimate homer here. But my moment is Team USA's dominance at Worlds this year. Team USA accomplished something that has matter of factly never been done. And their dominance was so far and so wide across both teams. We know powerlifting to be an individual sport, but obviously at the world level, it's a collective one as well. And so nobody is wearing their surname on the back of their jersey. They're wearing their country's name across their chest. And so they're representing a national team, as well as, of course, representing themselves. But Team USA's dominance was just absolutely extraordinary. So we had 15 lifters compete on the team. Obviously, Natalie Richards had to drop out because of injury. But the men's team had a perfect score of 60 because we had 5 golds. The women's team had 49 points. And of the 15 lifters, 13 of them qualified to go to the World Games, which means only 2 out of 15 were off podium. 9 of those lifters qualified to go to the Sheffield, right? The all-star game of all all-star games in our sport. And so you also had, if you like stats, and I know you do, because facts over feelings type of thing. There were 135 attempts taken by the 15 Americans, and there were only 19 misses. And of those 19 misses, 3 were overturned by the jury. 1 was an attempt that was actually passed. Only 9 were missed on strength, and 6 were missed on technicality. So what that means is out of 9, they were averaging 86% success rate, or 7.73 attempts out of 9. And we just had some extraordinary performances from extraordinary people doing what they do best, and I know, earlier in the podcast, Eric sung my praises, and I appreciate that. But you know what? Lifters make lifts like players make plays. And they go out there and they execute at the highest level, and they make me and the rest of the coaching staff look good. And it's just unbelievable what Team USA did. And I don't know if we're ever going to see that again. The talent pool is so deep and far and wide in the United States, and it's such a huge country with a huge population, but other countries are catching up, and there's talent pools that are, beginning to rival that. And we've got pockets of people in different weight classes from these other countries who are raising their hand and in the conversation as well. But all that is to say is that the Team USA dominance at 2024 Classic Worlds is something that's never been seen before, and I'm not so certain that we're ever going to see it again. And so for that reason, that is my moment of the year.
All said. Yeah, it remains to be seen if our nation can dominate like that again in the future.
Yeah.
Eric,
I mean,
what are your thoughts?
I took a slightly different tact on this. And instead of pointing out a specific moment, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something very unfortunate, actually. And that is the untimely passing of Stanley Oden, who placed bronze in the super heavyweight class, secured a position to World Games, which is arguably the most important competition we have in our sport, and then unfortunately passed away suddenly in his 20s, which is tragic. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, because I think we need to remember that, all the head-to-head battles, all the medals and all that stuff it's great. But personally for me, as someone who has found purpose, meaning, direction, and success through the iron, whenever we lose someone, especially that young, who is a brother or sister in iron, it's tragic. And I think we have to remember that, we're going to remember some things. I remember my first time coaching at Worlds. I remember my first time having a very high level lifter. I remember my own competition success and in other sports. But it's really the people you meet that, as cliche as it is. Some cliches are cliche because they're true, and people repeat them, and they're universal truths. And I think universal truth, it's the relationships we make and the people we know that are really what bind lifters together. And so yeah, when we lose someone, that is an impact that I think we just need to give the appropriate gravity to. And so that I just wanted to acknowledge that very unfortunate moment for 2024.
Yeah, it was right on. I think he's 26. As you said, he just as an athlete was reaching his peak, took a medal at Worlds. You know, he's also Jad Jacobs' coach, whom is proceeding to lift at Sheffield. And I mean, you think of no better way to honor his memory than to lift at Sheffield. And I can only imagine how difficult it's going to be when she shows up and he's not there. It's quite the story. And sports are amazing with how sports can give you these riveting stories.
Yeah.
Some of them gut wrenching that have both tragedy and triumph intertwined with them, braided
Yeah.
together.
I didn't know him well by any means, but
Mhm.
when I got to coach at the first Sheffield, we shared a ride, I think, from the airport. And English isn't their first language, but we had a nice conversation. And I remember Jad was, I think she had, if I recall correctly, she had missed a bench press or two and was in tears between attempts. And he was doing the coaching thing. I don't know what was said because I don't speak French, but he was. I had been in that same moment myself. I related to it. I looked at it and I was like, that's he's doing what coaches do. He's helping his athlete rally, supporting her in the moment, come back and do what she needs to do. Um, so it was, you see the same thing in other people from different age groups, ethnic backgrounds, countries, personal stories, and I think it's amazing that the iron binds us. So it is. I think it is really important just to acknowledge when things like this happen. They're not fun to talk about by any means, but they need to have their space and time and acknowledgement so that the community stays tight and doesn't forget what's important.
Yeah, he was on the podcast with Shad going
Yeah.
back a couple of years ago. And yeah, seeing him at different worlds and whatnot. And it's a reminder, if nothing else, like do not take this for granted. This is all we are operating on borrowed time. Time is fleeting. It doesn't matter how old you are. And yeah, in terms of moments, appreciate every single one of them that you got. We've been lucky, gentlemen. We've had quite a few. We all have been all over the world, met a lot of interesting people, heard a lot of interesting stories, and we met each other through these adventures we've been on. And fellas, I can honestly say I am freaking extremely grateful that you two came into my life and you guys contributing to King of Lifts, like all the podcast episodes, every episode we have. Um, and I'm glad, like, I hopefully get to see you guys repeatedly at all these different world championships. But no matter what, we're going to continue to do these, ruffle some feathers. Some people will agree. Some people get pulled aside by John Hack, no less, at a fucking dinner engagement. And, but
Fresh
you
out of the hospital from Leah Bavois beating me up in
I
the
was
in the
just about to
elevator.
say you've caught the brunt of a couple people. Leah Bavois, John Hack. These are some big name people. You got
And
I
Leah was
mean,
at the piloting conference, and fortunately we had repaired that rift. And just as I come back, I just get clotheslined by John Hack out of the
exactly.
sidelines.
You show up like, oh, everything's all good here. We tidied some things up. John has like, no, we got a couple untidied, loose knots to tidy up.
So my powerlifting moment of the year is going to be actually a meet that I wasn't at. It would have been Sheffield last year, which I watched from my apartment in Australia. And so I was watching it at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, surrounded by snacks on my couch. And I think I'm around the first or second bench presses, I realized that Agatha was pacing for a 600 kilo total. And I think like that sort of took place over like sort of about 90 minutes from that point onwards. And so that's sort of like 90 minutes of realizing that not only was she going to win, which I think we'd all sort of forecasted or like predicted, but that she was going to win by like a lot. And watching that and unfold in real time, that's my powerlifting moment of the year.
Amelia's gonna say the exact same thing. 2 a.m. covered in snacks.
I was at Rory's, I had to get a quick flight back to interview the athletes, but it was,
Yeah, the thing is, you were working the event. That's right. Doesn't work.
yeah,
Um,
it wasn't. Um, that's very wholesome, Rory. Um, yeah, it's hard because I think one that really stands out is one that we've already spoken about, which Rory mentioned, which was Duran's coming out for that and pulling that last deadlift. It was the energy in the room was really quite electric, to be able to silence, and it was a full room, it was a very full room, to silence a room of people that size, and then the roar that came afterwards was incredible. In terms of non-performance, something that, both times. I'm looking forward to already. That makes me feel super, super hyped. And if you haven't, anyone listening hasn't been to Sheffield and you're planning on going at some point, get your tickets as soon as possible because I think this year it sold out in like 2 days or something. But um, if you have been in person, they do this thing at the beginning where they like the lights go down and like they quickly do like a profile of all the athletes and there's like really bassy music and it feels like it just feels a bit like a concert. I think you said, Ryan, like it's like a rock concert at the beginning of Sheffield. And it just gets you so hyped for powerlifting in a way that nothing else really can. So that always is so electric. I always make sure I'm in the room for that because it's an amazing, spectacle even before the lifting starts that the production team put on. But I think Worlds this year was so special because there were so many battles we were treated to. Um, I think actually during final deadlift, when the silence finally broke and people started cheering because he got it, was pretty special. And obviously, a whole lot of people started crying in the crowd. It was a really special moment. So that'll be, I think, mine.
Much appreciated for this look back at 2024 and help me in terms of giving out the awards and whatnot. And I'm sure everybody is going to have their opinions on it, but we've covered some good bases. I think we did a good job. No matter what you do, the DMs are going to get filled and some sports debates are going to break out and possibly even at dinner tables. Who knows? It depends on where you're at. But it is what it is. And for everybody listening, please do subscribe, give us high ratings as per usual, and tune in for the look ahead to 2025, where we'll talk about some rising stars from 2024 that we think you should be caught up on, as well as Matt Gary touching up on his shift. I don't know if you guys recognize there's a bit of an accent developing in his talk already. And I detect it. We'll see where we're at by next episode. But he'll talk about the British team, his future, what he's doing, and we'll take it off from there. So until next time, Pack Lapadat, 6 up, and we are out.